We've had a whole heap of people this week who have come into the studio, and whether they've been in our fitness classes or whether they've been in our sort of clinical side from physio or rehab, one of the themes has basically generally been a lot of tightness and a lot of discomfort through hamstrings. They don't feel that they've had a lot of hamstring flexibility, but also the fact that they found it very, very difficult to isolate and move their pelvis. So I'm going to give you a tip today about how to be able to move your pelvis if you're sitting, because obviously if you have tight hamstrings and you're finding that your hamstrings aren't efficiently working for you, then what tends to happen is those tight hamstrings then cause your pelvis to curl underneath. So if I've got my pelvis here and my hamstrings run from obviously the top of my top of my thigh, and they attach on my pelvis here, and they attach to the back of my leg. If my pelvis and my hamstrings are tight, my tight hamstrings pull my pelvis underneath, which means that I'm in that curled back position through here, which means then when I try and stretch my hamstrings out, so if I'm trying to do a general hamstring stretch, I'm in a tucked under position. So if I'm sitting down, I'm going to be tucked under. If I try and stretch there, I'm still going to be tucked under, which then means I'm getting stress and strain on my spine. So take the hamstrings out. We're just going to sit normally on a chair, and instead of being in that round sort of back position through like this, what I want you to do is just try and stick your belly button out so you bring your pelvis forwards. So we're in a nice upright posture, and then we're going to let the belly button sink backwards, and then we're going to let the belly button stick forwards. Okay, so it's basically we're tilting the pelvis underneath us and we're tilting the pelvis up. I don't want you to have too much movement from your upper back, because your upper back isn't doing it from your upper back. So if you're sitting here and you just sit upright, what tends to happen is your pelvis doesn't move at all. What we want to happen is as you move, you feel that your pelvis sits behind, and most of us these days sit in that curled back position and we're very slumped over everything. What we want to then do is put the pelvis so you're sitting on the sit bones, okay, and the body comes more upright. So we curl backwards and we sit upright, and we just start to get some mobility through the pelvis. Okay, if you're not sure, you put your hands underneath, you'll feel that your sit bones are there. You want to move the sit bones so they sit in front of your hands, and then you want to sit forward, so as you sit upright you feel that you're sitting on your sit bones. You sit behind your sit bones, and then you sit on your sit bones. So what's basically happening from a pelvis point of view is your pelvis is moving forwards and backwards. It's not your body, your upper body moving forwards and backwards. Once you can get that bit working right, then we can start adding on a little bit of a hamstring stretch. But it's worthwhile seeing, if you're not sure, whether you've actually got the right mobility through your pelvis to start with, because if you don't have any pelvis mobility and you can't actually tilt and move from the pelvis, it doesn't really matter how much you stretch your hamstrings or how much mobility you feel you're getting, you're not going to be able to get a better posture around your pelvis without having that mobility through your pelvis. So have a go at that. If you're doing it standing, we're basically looking at pelvis tilts under, pelvis goes forwards, pelvis tilts under and backwards. But like I say, a lot easier to do it on a seated position, because you can sit behind and sit upwards and feel that your pelvis actually moves forwards and backwards. Okay, so if you're struggling with potentially doing some hamstring stretches, or you feel that you're getting quite stiff and sore around the lower back, or you're finding that you're struggling just to move around your pelvis and you're spending all day sitting and slumped, worth trying to do some pelvic tilts and just get some mobility around through the pelvis as well. Obviously, if you have back problems or backache and it's not working for you, then always maybe seek advice before you do any of the things we advise you to do. But this is a nice way just to get some movement and just the mobility through the pelvis. So here you go.